negotiating matters.
So moved. Second.
And please call the roll.
Brumback,
Yes.
Sanderson,
Yes.
Delariva,
Yes.
Fund,
Yes.
Patey,
Yes.
Birtles.
Yes. With the motion approved to reconvene to open session, Carrie, would you please call the roll call?
Delariva,
Here.
Brumback,
Here.
Fund, here, Sanderson,
Here.
Patey,
Here.
Ahart, Proctor,
Here.
Trotter,
Here.
Birtles.
Here. I would like to welcome our guests that are with us this evening at our special meeting, and at this time, please ask you to stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I will entertain a motion to approve the March 10th, 2025 special agenda as it has been presented this evening.
So moved.
Second.
And please call the roll.
Patey,
Yes.
Fund,
Yes.
Delariva,
Yes.
Brumback,
Yes.
Sanderson,
Yes.
Birtles.
Yes. At this time, the board has set aside time for anyone wishing to address the board. Is there anyone in attendance that would like to address the board? And we will move on to our discussion items. First of which is the Strategic Plan Goal 3 report. I would like to welcome Andrea Grodefint, Director of Special Education and School Support, to discuss the board, the Strategic Plan Goal 3 report.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Thanks for having me.
Can you pull the
Move the
mic
mic
over
over
just a
just a
touch, please?
Can you hear me? Okay. I'm thrilled to come and talk to you about what we've been able to accomplish this year with our strategic goal number 3. There is a lot, so I tend to get on a roll. So please feel free to stop me and ask questions, and I'll be happy to answer them. I am really the facilitator, but there are so many people that are involved in this goal. So if I can't answer your question today, I brought my pen and I will make sure that we get those back to you. Okay, so we'll get started, and I do have the schematic of our little schoolhouse up there that has our goal statement that we will foster an equitable, safe, and inclusive environment for all members of the District 7 community. And there are 3 main focus areas, and those are equitable, safe, and inclusive. And that's how I'll be presenting this evening, what we are doing underneath each one of those domains. So when we talk about equitable, we are providing a learning environment where students are given opportunities to meet all their needs, or their needs in all areas. Under safe, we are promoting a safe and positive preschool to 12+ environment that is conducive to student learning. We actually have ages from 3 to 22 in our district. And then under inclusive, we are creating a positive school environment where students, faculty, and community feel empowered, respected, and included. So our first area is that equitable environment. And this one by far has the most targets that we have been addressing this school year. And they all fall under these areas up here: the expansion of preschool programming, the implementation of an MTSS framework across District 7 schools that provide tiered support across a continuum of learners, and the expansion of academic and mental health supports outside the school setting. So I will start off with talking a little bit about our preschool programming. Last year we applied for and were approved for increased funding in order to expand services, and so we did so in our northern area. Hamel does have a preschool for all classrooms that can serve an additional 34 students. With that, I wanted to kind of give you a snapshot of where we are right now with our current preschool students across District 7. We have 2 early childhood classrooms, one at Glen Carbon and Goshen, and we are currently with 35 students out of a 40 max, and these are students with identified disabilities. For our preschool for all classrooms, we have 5 of them across the district, and we currently are seating 144 students out of 170 max. So there are 2 at Glen Carbon, 2 at Goshen, and 1 at Hamel. And then lastly, we have our preschool academy. That is 3 classrooms. That's our private tuition-based program. It is a full-day program, and that is maxed out with 60 out of 60 seats. When we're in March and we're kind of looking at these numbers and kind of wondering, wow, why are we not full at that preschool for all section? The team really does look at early childhood and preschool for all and moving children in and out as we need to. We obviously want as many children as we can in that preschool for all because it's least restrictive, for them. So they're constantly doing that movement. Under child find, if we get pretty close to that 40 and we go over, we have to open another class. So we do try to watch that very closely, especially this time of the year. But there are other factors. Early childhood and preschool for all are half-day programs. And so a lot of our families can't, there's transportation issues as well as what do they do for the other half of the day for childcare. So that is something that we have continued to look at for several years. We even had a discussion fairly recently about taking one classroom and having what we call our wraparound care, where our students that are meeting a pretty high risk criteria or those that are getting ready to transition into kindergarten, because going from 2.5 hours to a full day is a pretty big jump from a lot of our small children. And then what it would look like. So we would have everybody would come in the morning for 34 students. The AM section would stay with the classroom teacher while the afternoon section would be with more of a daycare provider, and then they would switch half day. The only thing as far as we've gotten is been to release a survey to families to gauge if they would like that or not. So more
with
things
that-
to come.
The half day that they're not in with the teacher, is that a paid? Or
It would be paid, yeah.
Parents would have to pay to do that?
Potentially, yes.
Okay.
Yes. Okay. So the next target we had under equitable environment is the implementation of an MTSS framework across all District 7 schools that provides tiered support across the continuum of learners. And we had 3 specific target areas, piloting second step, which is the SEL curriculum. We have been utilizing K-8 for about 3 to 4 years now. We decided to try to do a pilot at the preschool level and then also at the high school level. We targeted training and implementation of consistent behavior procedures. Last year we brought to you and kind of reviewed the behavior matrix, and so we're trying to really align that across District 7. And then finally, we are doing our ongoing review of evidence-based curriculums for Tier 2 supports in identified areas of need. So I will break each one of those down. For preschool second step, the teachers, all 10 of them, are implementing it. And there are a total of 2 units, 12 weeks of lessons, and then these little mini lessons. So they are presented daily and they're short. And that's good if you know about timing with early childhood and preschool, where we are pretty maxed out at specific times of everything we have to do to get those skills in for 2.5 hours. And the targeted skills are the learning how to be in school, empathy, emotional regulation, friendship skills, problem solving, and transitions. The feedback from the teachers has been very good. They do like that it's short and that it's language that their program assistants and people all are hearing so that they can utilize it throughout the day. But the big one that I'm excited to talk about is the program at the high school. And finding a SEL curriculum for a high school is really, really difficult, especially if you don't have a designated block in order to do a lesson. So Second Step came up with a program this year that we were pretty excited to try that does not give you a specific lesson, but it is more of a concept, or what they call a pathway, that can be implemented in every type of curriculum. So in order to do that, we have one teacher at the high school who is very passionate about SEL, and she's our curriculum leader. And she kind of went out and recruited different departments. And so our educator pilot team, we have representation from the math department, social studies, special education by way of 3 different individuals, one that does interpersonal relations, one my specialized program, and one that does ELA cross-cat. So a pretty wide variety under the special ed umbrella. The business department, world language, and including our MEL. So just a little bit more about this to try to explain it to you. There is no specific lesson. There is more of a concept. There are 4 main concepts, including belonging, confidence, opportunity, and well-being and community. And they basically give them a guideline. And globally, all of it is just really about having relationships with kids. Ms. Lakowski, who is our curriculum leader, shared with me that one of the individuals that's doing this pilot said, I had no idea. Like, I had no idea what's going on with our kids outside of just going in and trying to get down to business. And it really does just take that 5 minutes to really kind of implement this program. So one of the examples they give is like an AP calculus class, and they're sharing about coping skills and time management and organization and how you can utilize that in every classroom. It's a pretty neat concept. So it does engage students through real world examples and fosters that social connections and relationships. It helps them transition for college and or careers. The content can be adapted to meet the needs of the student cohort, which is important. And we will be looking at the data that's collected by comparing their January and May data chats, which I'll talk about in just a little bit, along with our panorama survey results to see if there has been an increase in that student belonging as at the end of the school year, to see if it is a platform option for the high school. But we didn't stop with just teachers. There's an administration component as well. And the high school admin team has been amazing. They collaborate with that curriculum leader and the mental health team to try to promote the same pathways, but on a broader scale across the school. And so they can also help by coaching and supporting the teachers as well. So when we were doing the pathway on belonging at the very beginning, the admin team had kind of an assignment to be very intentional about grading students and kind of tracking how many of them and being visible. So something that sounds so easy, but truly is making a difference. Okay. So our next one is the training and implementation of consistent behavior procedures. And Dr. Duncan shared a little bit about this at the beginning of the school year, where over the summer, every building has a building team, and the MTSS, which again is that multi-tiered systems of support, met to align district-wide procedures. So we had representatives from every building, and we talked about protocols and what if they do align with what is an incident, what is a log, does it align with the behavior matrix. We talked about communication down from the teacher communicating with the admin and related service team, as well as communicating with parents. We broke down what is a teacher versus an administrator's responsibility, so classroom management versus a trip to the office. And then our district MDAT, which is the MTSS District Action Team, that meets every month, and we have a member from every building. They assigned a behavior goal for their building this year to help reduce those discipline referrals. Every year we do that. Last year it was attendance, and this year is behavior is our target. And so we are continuing to have ongoing discussions on maintaining the consistency of the logging as well as reporting incidents, and that's really important for those of us at the 50,000 height view, because we need to be able to have them log the same way so that we can pull that data successfully. And again, at the end of the school year, we are getting close to reviewing all of the goals and the outcomes for that. And I will share just a little bit of behavior data for you in just a little bit. And then finally here with the SEL committee, we have representation, social workers and counselors from kindergarten through 12th grade that have gotten together over the last few years because we've had such an increase in mental health support. So thank you for that. And we were able to really expand our tiered intervention with students. But with that, we need to make sure that we have curriculums and resources that are able to support our students' needs. And so we are constantly reviewing what we have and trying to expand our library. And just so you are all aware, all of our curriculums are evidence-based and aligned with the CASEL standards. And if you're not sure what that is, I did write it out because I get confused with my CASEL acronym for special education, but it is the Collaborative for Academic, Social, and Emotional Learning. It is a group that supports research and practices in SEL. And everything that we have is aligned to CASEL standards, including the things you see in Panorama and et cetera. Okay? Okay, so just very briefly, I'll share a little bit about our expansion of academic and mental health supports. This school year, we targeted the expansion of PACE Scholar and tiered intervention through iReady. And then with mental health, we did talk, we were able to partner with Cartwheel, which was that telehealth platform, and I'll share a little bit more about that, as well as increase our tracking of intervention plans in Panorama. So, the expansion of PACE, and PACE stands for Partnerships for Academic and Community Engagement. This is our partnership with SIUE, and it is basically more of a math intervention for intermediate levels. It's really focusing on the math facts, so multiplication and division. Last year, we only served 5th grade students to try to get them kind of caught up before they go to 6th grade. This year, we were able to expand to 4th grade and 5th grade. The two charts on the screen I know are a little hard to see. This was something I shared with you in your board report several weeks ago, but I thought I'd bring it back to kind of explain what you're seeing. If you look at the top graph there, we have representation of students in the black column, and those are students who met the criteria to participate in this math intervention, but were unable to do so for a number of different reasons. This tutoring, for lack of a better word, occurs before school in some schools and then after school in others. And so if you are unable to bring your child in or pick them up, that is a reason that they are unable to attend. The orange column is the students who met the criteria and did take the 12-week intervention. This is the fall to winter data. The first 4 columns that you see to the top left shows our fast bridge scores in A math from the fall to the winter. So although both groups of students did make progress, the students with PACE obviously did better. The 4 columns to your right on the top graph shows a much bigger increase in the winter CBM, so that computation skills for students that were able to participate in PACE. The bottom graph is our 5th grade, and it's very similar. Again, it just shows the fall to winter on the left for the A math from FastBridge, and then FastBridge CBM, more of that computation on the right. So again, still growth for those students that were able to participate, and overall, it's continuing to do well. We are in our spring session, and they will be finished by April. So Dr. Knoyer always sends an update of all, like a full report of the implementation and results. Do you have any questions about that?
So when somebody's going through this program, I mean, they've hit a threshold that causes them to go through, I guess, whatever the name is, what's the name of it?
Can you read it?
Yeah, I'm trying to read
The
it.
different,
Yeah.
the FastBridge?
Yeah, well, I mean, when you take that FastBridge score and you start going through the math intervention,
Yes.
and you go through it, I assume that you reach a certain threshold again to where you no longer get that
is-
support.
That is correct.
Is that the same number that they entered?
You mean like after they go through it?
Yeah, let's say
It's a criteria
they go
level.
below a 70, and once you get them back up to 70, does the support stop?
No,
Or does it
they
continue?
will continue for the 12 weeks, but then they may not qualify for the spring session. So we
Okay.
do a fall section and a spring session. There are students in now that qualified for both, but there are a number of them that, because of their scores, they did not qualify for the intervention for the spring.
So do you track what happens to those students after they don't qualify?
Yes.
Whether or not they go back
Yes,
down?
we keep track of them. The students that are in 5th grade that had it, or that are in 6th grade that had it in 5th grade, we have their data, and Dr. Knoyer continues to track what their interventions, like where they're at in 6th grade now, to see if it has truly, they've been able to sustain or if they've gone back down.
Okay.
Is that what you're asking?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah,
perfect.
I
Okay.
mean, because I would be curious, I mean, just, I guess, my concern is that once you get back up to where you don't qualify anymore,
Then what?
do they get back to the middle? Do they just kind of stay below the radar? They're just good enough that,
Right.
you know, then by the time they get to high school, they're so frustrated with math that they don't want to continue anyway because it's still so hard. But if we had put a little bit more time, I think about just,
Their sustainability.
yeah, well, I mean, yeah, you need the numbers to kind of identify stuff, but if you pull them off because they hit the numbers, sometimes that doesn't tell the full story about what was needed in the long run. So I just worry about that.
Some of our we've only done it 1 year, but our students that transition into 6th grade, that information was provided to the admin teams because we have hops in the math seminar too, to make sure that they don't get lost in the track, and middle school.
And two, there's a difference in intervention between content and skill. So, you know, if you're receiving intervention on gaps in your content, once those gaps are filled, then you should be good to go. But where your deficit is in your ability to organize, to time management, to focus, those are things that may need ongoing support and may not fit that gap. Is that what you're saying?
100%.
Okay.
100%. Yes, and again, this is only designated for the multiplication and division facts. That is the target for this intervention.
So it's not designed to improve like study skills and those types
No.
of skills? It's just content gaps? Okay.
It's just content gaps, and they meet twice a week for 12 weeks. Okay, the other academic expansion has to do with iReady and personalized instruction. So iReady is the math curriculum K-5 that we are doing a lot of PD on this year, and Ms. Fox is behind me and she can speak a lot more to it than me. But it is the curriculum that we're adopting for next school year. But part of that is the iReady personalized instruction, or they kind of call it MyPath, and it's an online program. And what it does is the students take an iReady diagnostic data test, and it shows the areas of need for that child, and it creates its own personal little path for them. What's exciting for our district as a whole is that what it can target is prerequisite skills that the child is lacking. It can target on grade level, like we're just kind of on that bubble, but it also is for enrichment. For our students that are above grade level, it will push them into those enrichment activities. It has been implemented district-wide K-5 in all Gen Ed classrooms this school year with a target of 45 to 49 minutes a week. It has been optional in special education, although they are taking the iReady diagnostic test. We haven't fully adopted the intervention. Some teachers have for kiddos that are in more of a support setting, but our students that have full instructional math are utilizing an alternative specialized curriculum. And so we are looking at iReady because they say that it's a global curriculum. It can be used in special education as well. So we are learning on that, and all cross-cat teachers are being trained throughout this year to see where we can go for next year. Okay, we're going to jump into mental health supports. And like I shared earlier, we were able to partner with Cartwheel, which is a telehealth platform, and their main goal is to help reduce the length time for a child that is being referred for services. This particular year, our pilot, we had 50 seats. In the beginning of March, we were told that 44 of those 50 seats were being occupied with our students that were receiving care. I did receive a note today that we are actually over. Now there's 51 that are that students have been referred, so we'll work through that tomorrow, but that is where we are. Of that, 52% of our students that are receiving care hold an IEP or a 504, while 48 are in Gen Ed with very little supports. But the biggest number is that 65% are the students that are receiving care that are Medicaid eligible or uninsured, and that is truly why we really wanted to go with this, because they were able to get a referral and start seeing a counselor much quicker than they would in our area, or been able to do. The graph that you see is showing the referrals by grade level, and so even though our secondary obviously has more referrals than our kindergarten, first and second, they are being serviced there at that level as well. Kindergarten, first and second, is not just about a student receiving therapy, it is a family approach. And this next slide really shows a really nice schematic of that. So of our students that are being served right now, 38% of them are only receiving counseling services. 5% are receiving therapy and psychiatric care, so medical management, which is another huge bonus of this platform. 43% are receiving therapy with parent support and participation, and then that 14% of our students are receiving all three.
When is this happening? Is it happening during the school day,
No,
outside
no,
of school
ma'am,
time?
it is outside the school day. Okay.
And how does one get eligible or able to,
Yeah.
to take the service?
So it's the majority of our mental health teams in our buildings will refer a student. All referrals come through myself and Christine Mitchell, the coordinator of SEL or MTSS, in case one of us is out. We review, and then Cartwheel takes over. We do nothing else. They contact the family. Our dashboard shows us the engagement of where each child is in care, but we don't have the logs or the information of what's being conversed in that. Their dashboard is pretty phenomenal when it comes to data, and they are growing by leaps and bounds. All of our neighboring districts are utilizing it, the majority of them, and they are across the nation.
Do you have any idea how long therapy families or kids stay in therapy? Is it like weeks or months, or it depends?
Great question. It does depend. They start off with 6 weeks.
Okay,
And
okay.
Cartwheel is, in that 6-week time, trying to make connections with in-person therapists in our area in order to transition our students in. Of all the students that have received care that are completing that 6 weeks, I've only had 2 requests from Cartwheel to continue for another 6 with them. So they are being able to move them out pretty quickly. Yeah.
That's good. Including psychiatry?
Oh, I don't know about that part.
Yeah, 'cause
That's,
there's a
that's the big
big-
one. That's the long one.
In
Yeah.
the Metro East and St. Louis area, this has been a few years ago, there were only 17 child psychiatrists.
Yes, my understanding is wait times can be up to a year.
Yeah, if you even can get in.
Correct. It's a
Well,
pretty
this
neat
is still
system.
good to see, though.
Yeah. Okay, we're going to move into safe environment now. So we had 2 main targets: to adopt and implement a universal social emotional curriculum across all of our District 7 schools. I already spoke in depth about the pilot of Second Step. It is our goal to be able to have it again district-wide. The other part of that was fidelity checks for consistent implementation of Second Step K-8. So we implemented that several years ago, and so we were working with admin teams in order to kind of, I don't want to say cross-check, but to make sure that they are being implemented with fidelity. But the big part of this that I will talk about is our student data and monitoring the progress in response to social emotional learning and interventions. Okay. So every District 7 building has what we call data chats. They do vary on how often that we have them and what criteria we are looking for. But when we are in the data chat with the building team, and again, it's admin and it's related service staff, and sometimes it is teachers as well, they are looking at those 4 targets: attendance, academics, behavior, and social emotional. We are problem solving the students with the data. We are looking for potential interventions. We assign interventions, and then we come back in 6 to 8 weeks to talk about if those interventions need to continue. To give you an idea of the frequency and what we're looking for, to make it a little more clear, kindergarten through 3rd grade, they meet 3 times a year, and it's after our Fast Bridge assessments, our SAVERs, and then our Panorama SEL survey. They are looking for students that are shown to be in the critical range on those surveys to target interventions. At the middle school, they actually meet twice a month, and they are looking for students that are failing 1 or more classrooms, and that they are 1 or more, classes, and they are at that critical range in Panorama for behavior, attendance, or SEL. Or they also scored high on SAVERs, because that's part of Fast Bridge that goes into middle school. They meet twice a month because they are also not only looking at students in that data, but they're also looking at their HOPs and their seminar programs. So they meet very often to move kids in and out. And then our high school is a different ballgame because that's a number of different administrators, a large number of students, and trying to align all of the mental health team that needs to be part of that. They meet quarterly. And on those quarterly meetings, they go through all of the students. It's a week-long process. And they identify the students that need to be, that are at high risk or critical in the Panorama survey underneath attendance, SEL, academics, they're failing one or more. So attendance, behavior, and SEL, and that they have to be failing one or more classes in order for them to do an intervention plan. I'll talk a little more about that. And then we have consistent use of intervention plans for all students in District 7 schools. So all Tier 2 interventions for behavior, attendance, and SEL are being integrated into Panorama. And that is a one-stop shop so that we have ongoing monitoring. You can assign, you are a champion, but if Jill is another classroom teacher and I need some data points from her, she can be assigned as part of that intervention plan. It gives you progress tracking, it alerts you when it's time to make sure you're entering the data that you need, and it reminds you that your 6 to 8 weeks is about up and you need to reconvene. Right now, we have 214 intervention plans as of today, or Friday when I did this slide, that are being monitored in Panorama. To me, that was a little low. I thought that we would have quite a few more in there, but then I was reminded that we're coming off of a 6 to 8 week intervention, so some of them, a lot of them, which is a very good thing to have, are coming off of those plans. Okay. Any questions about that? Okay. So I could not get out of here without showing you some more SEL data, because we really are doing some pretty great stuff. So this is Panorama data for district-wide. Right now, 88% of our students are on track for attendance. 96% of students are on track for behavior, which is amazing. And those, again, we have those building goals that we have been targeting. So kudos to the buildings for staying on track with that. 77% of our students are on track for SEL. And the reason for that is we have about over 1,700 students that may not have the full SEL data due to grade, like kindergarten and first grade, and our students that opt out of our surveys.
What does it mean to be on track for attendance?
It means that as of a nationally normed with Panorama, we are on track to maintain, we're over that 80% like the threshold of their nationally recognized criteria.
Is that similar to what our state definition of chronic absenteeism?
It is, we are actually above the state in all of these.
Okay.
I did not put academic up there, and there is a reason for that. So all of SEL and attendance and behavior is cumulative in Panorama. It is ongoing. Academic is a snapshot in time. So if I would pull it today, it could be 33%, because again, you are targeted if you're failing one or more classes. Well, if your teacher is out and hasn't put in grades, that could impact you. So tomorrow it could be 78%. So it's kind of a moving target until the end of the year, and then we will pull that data for a global, how we are with academics. So I wanted to make sure I pointed that out for you. And then I know we show a lot of graphs about our surveys, and we do look at them at building level and as a district from fall to winter to spring, but it's also important that we're starting to pull data from year to year. We're comparing. So what you see up here is grades 3 through 5, and it's the Student Competency and Wellness Survey from 2023 on the left and 2024. This is our most recent survey. Green always means good, and we are right on track. We stayed the same in supportive relationships, self-management. We went up in challenging feelings. We stayed the same in self-efficacy, and we stayed the same in our emotion regulation. Pretty comparable in the number of students that took it last year versus this year, but it's just another snapshot of what we use the Panorama for, to be able to look across those. I also pulled it for secondary. Again, very similar implementation, and we did stay the same in supportive relationships. We went up in self-management, stayed the same in emotion regulation. We did go down in challenging feelings by 1 percentage point. But we went up 2 percentage points in self-efficacy. So just more data for us to look at and wonder why, and then really kind of dig into, was it the way that it was implemented? Was it One of the things that came up this fall was that we've used the same panorama questions for 3 years now. Is it time to look at a different set and really see if those are the ones that are meeting what we want to find out? So,
And my other question,
Yeah.
comparing the winter to winter, most of those students are going to be the same, but say for instance, last year's 12th graders aren't in here and a new batch of 6th graders are in. So does that account for some of the change?
it could, for sure, it could. We also have students that I know that are 18 at the high school too, that are like, yeah, I'm not gonna take this year. So that's,
Yeah.
you know, just kind of depends on that age group too. So there's a lot of factors that play into it, so.
Is
Okay,
there a way to look at the data of like, if they took it last year to this year?
yes, there is a way to dig down, yes.
Okay.
Yes. We wouldn't typically do that for the survey though, for it being anonymous, but if we needed to, we
Right.
potentially could, yes.
Okay.
The last thing is our inclusive environment, and we really did well with this one, I think, for this school year. So we wanted to increase our opportunities for certified and uncertified faculty and to be active stakeholders in district-wide decisions, as well as promoting diverse participation in community forums regarding district initiatives. And by doing that, we did a lot of surveys as well as committee work. So instead of trying to make a list of all of, like, from surveying students to staff to community, I just decided to do a Wordle. And so we have a number of different committees, including the steering committee, parent-teacher advisory. We did our 5 essentials. We have listening sessions. We just completed the transportation survey that I think we'll be talking about tonight. My specific special ed and school support department did a survey for staff in the fall to talk about their understanding of child find and procedural safeguards, and we just did it for families of students that have IEPs and 504s. That survey is closed, and my report from SIU will be coming in the next couple weeks that I'll share with you as well. And with all of that, that's it. Do you have any other questions?
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yeah, nice.
Thank you, Andrea. Yeah, I'll take a bit on the pass it back over, but I'll take a bit.
So our second discussion item is the transportation school start time and a 7-period day update.
And I would love to say that Andrea had the longest part of the meeting, but I'd be lying to you if I said that, so we have a lot to go over. I really struggled with how much to take from previous presentations and give you again, so there is some repeat, but there's also some new, and tried to find a balance in there. We're going to talk about 3 different topics, and I've separated them into truly the 3 different topics. So we'll do transportation first, and moving from a 3-tier to a 2-tier system, and kind of where we are with that. Then we'll shift to changing school start times, with Tier 1 shifting to an elementary start time that would happen no earlier than 7:30, and a Tier 2 start time that would happen no earlier than 8:30. So notice I used no earlier, but I didn't say no later, and that's very intentional, because that's still a little bit fluid, and I'll talk about that. And then I'll invite several of my colleagues to join me at the table to talk about modifying the instructional day at the high school from a 6-period to a 7-period academic day. So before I get into our part, I want to remind the board and everybody in our audience, we've been working on this for almost 2 years. So it was June of 2023 when I said to the board, I think here are 3 things that at some point we need to address, and in what order and how do we want to address them. And at that time it was, let's see if we can put them all together into one nice package, because change is hard. And so we're there. We're at that point of decision making to the fullest extent we can be to do this for 26, 27. So we'll kind of wrap that up at the end. So I'm going to just continue to go back and forth. A couple of transportation facts, just as reminders of where we are with transportation system. We currently assign a route and a stop to every eligible student, regardless of whether they ride the bus, plan to ride the bus, ever ride the bus every day. And currently that is 6,480 students in a district of a little over 7,000. So the vast majority of our students have a bus route and a bus assigned to them. What we've learned through the process is there is a lot of institutional knowledge that goes with how we do that, to the point that we kind of know this stop usually has about 10 kids. Even though there might be 40 assigned to that stop, we know that historically there's 10 to 15 kids. And so there are some buses that if everybody showed up to the bus, we would need 2 more buses to take them all. And there are some buses where we think 30 kids are going to show up and it's really 15. So that's one of the places that we can really start to talk about efficiency. We also know that ridership by level varies greatly. And we have based our ridership and our times on the vast majority of students showing up to school on a bus, the fact that they need to eat breakfast at school, because very few students eat breakfast at school comparatively, and then getting everybody home and doing that in that 3-tier model. So with elementary and middle school, it's really pretty consistent of 50% of students ride buses. Now, that does change at middle school by season. In fact, we were talking with our folks at SIUE, and they said, did something happen in October where all of a sudden middle school kids started riding the bus? And we're like, yeah, fall sports was over. So all of a sudden, cross country and softball and baseball are over, and it's time for kids to jump on a bus. And so the ridership went up pretty significantly. And so all that information is really helpful to try to predict what system is going to be the most effective to transport students. Also, based on our fall ridership audits, and this has continued to be validated, an average of 25 bus stops that are included in routes don't include or don't have students at those stops. And that's not very important for in-town routes. So you're driving down Meridian Road, and if there's not a student at a stop, we're driving past that stop. But when you start routing outside of Glen Carbon and Edwardsville, and you're going out to Jill or Bob's house, and maybe there's not a student on Quakers Grove at all, but you take that road anyway and do a turnaround and take a weird way to get back to school that now creates space and time on a route. And so getting really thoughtful about where those routes are, where our students are, whether they're riding or not, will help us be more efficient. We also have a transportation fund that continues to be outspent in terms of revenues expenditures. And at the bottom, the really important piece of this is that the state continues to prorate transportation reimbursement. This year, that transportation reimbursement was 77%. Next year, it will be 69%. So that's 8% less reimbursement we're going to get from the state. That is not a large chunk of our transportation budget, but it does whittle away at the revenue. And you can see the difference in revenue from 24 to 25 and see some example of proration there, because remember, we had a pretty healthy levy during that time, but the state reimbursement continues to go down. So something else to keep in mind. We also established some guardrails as we did this transportation study. And the guardrails that we provided were that elementary routes would be no longer than 60 minutes. And remember, when I clarify a route, that's from the start to the finish of the route, not the first pickup to the finish of the route. So if a student's bus is starting at the first student depot, right by Casson's and Sam's, and they're going all the way up north, they're going to take 10 minutes to get up to start their route. And so that 60 minutes now becomes 50 minutes. Then 75-minute bus routes for secondary, just covering a wider geographic footprint. The bus stops will be no more than half a mile from the house. We did identify the same buses will pick up elementary students and take them home, but that may not be the case for secondary. So there's a chance that you could ride bus 17 in the morning for secondary and 62 in the afternoon. We felt like secondary students could handle that. Elementary students need the same number. And then focusing on a 2-tier system. Now we're playing with some of that to say, well, in some cases, do primary and intermediate have to ride together? Does it make sense if you can split a K2 building and they can take their own bus and a 3-5 building is separate? But for the vast majority, it's going to be a mixture of the two. And we're filling buses to 80% so that if Jennifer calls and says, we just moved, my child needs a bus, we can pretty quickly make that modification and we're not having to find a whole new bus or a whole new route to make that happen. So there's some wiggle room there. So 80% of buses would be filled. So in the survey that we sent out a couple weeks ago, we asked about students riding on the same buses in middle school and high school, because that is a significant change from before. And the feedback that we got was different than the first feedback survey we got. In this survey, that 703 people agreed with the recommendation to put middle school and high school students on the same buses. There were concerns around high school students picking on middle school students. There were concerns about information being shared which may not be developmentally or age appropriate from high school to middle school students. And there were 703 comments to this, so that just kind of gives you an idea of the concerns. There were also people that kind of said, well, I assume you would separate middle school and high school like you do elementary, which we do. We put primary on one half of the bus and intermediate on this other half of the bus. I think you also have to remember, about 400 high school students are riding 45 buses.
Right.
So the average high school bus is going to have 5 to 15 students on it, and it's going to have 30 or so middle schoolers on it. In the January 2025 survey that we gave out, 57% of people in that survey indicated that they agreed or strongly agreed that middle school and high school students ride the same bus. So we did have quite a discrepancy there, and we'll talk about kind of the implications of this in just a moment.
Can I ask a question?
You can.
When you just said the high school and middle school students, you mean like they're assigned a seat and you'd put the middle school in the front and the high school in the back?
Mhm.
Is that what?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. That's what we do for K2 and 3-5.
Okay.
And then when you said the way we get transportation funding is, and maybe you've said that already in here and I missed it, we get paid per student, per mile traveled,
We get paid per mile of bus.
per mile of
Yes.
bus.
That's our reimbursement. I can't see Dave's head, so I'm waiting for Dave to validate that, but I'm pretty sure it's per mile of bus of reimbursable transportation.
So it doesn't matter how many kids are on the bus?
Correct. Correct.
Or how many buses?
Well, that would dictate the number of miles that you're driving. So
Okay. So,
yes and no, because you could probably,
One-
but then your time's going to be limited, right?
One bus 40 miles, 2 buses 20 miles, same thing.
Potentially, yes, same level of reimbursement. Yes. So we've learned a couple things. We've learned that we can gain some efficiencies with placement of bus stops. And we've learned that there are lots of places where bus stops might have just been inherited over time, that somehow made it into a system. And I'll use my own subdivision as an example. We have a bus stop that's, sorry folks that live in my subdivision, we have a bus stop that's 3 blocks apart. So students aren't walking a half a mile to get to the second bus stop. They're either walking a couple blocks to their bus stop or 2 more blocks to the second bus stop in a very small subdivision. And we've seen that replicated in multiple places. Now, there could have been good reasons why that was put in place. You know, it could have been for a specific student need. It could have been for a special education route that then got transferred into a regular education route. But the fact is we can be more efficient with that. We know we can gain some efficiency with better identification of ridership. So if we can identify who's going to ride the bus and specifically route, even if they don't ride it every day and we can still create a route for them, we're going to eliminate some of the miles that buses drive and some of the time that is involved in the bus. And then we also have learned that moving to that 2-tier system is going to be the most effective way to truly capitalize on the efficiency. There are ways we can be more efficient within a 3-tier system. We won't be able to identify exactly what those are until we put them in place. And we may even start to play with that this fall as we look at playing with some of the bus stops and some of the things like that. We will be able to identify some of those efficiencies, but we're just not sure to what extent.
But you will have to change sort of the service level agreement that people have come to expect that.
You will change some of the level of service agreement, and that will happen if you go to a 2-tier system where you become more efficient. Great example, we pick up, I want to say it's a Cassins Glen Carbon route that probably is 30 minutes total from start to finish of the route. And the route gets pretty full. If that route were to be replicated somewhere else and we weren't filling that bus, we're going to continue to drive that bus until we hit that 60-minute route or we fill the bus, one of the two. And so those routes that may have been shorter but didn't necessarily fill the bus are going to get a little bit longer and they're going to fill the bus to capitalize on the efficiency. What we're going to then eliminate is on the other side, which is one of the things that started this conversation, was buses in the northern area that were taking 75 to 90 minutes. Because we heard that over and over again as we were going through the bond and the feedback that we were getting. And so we want to make sure that we can validate those routes, that we're putting hard caps, because we don't believe that a primary student, elementary student should spend more than 60 minutes one way on a bus. That is the nature of public transportation, but we need to put some limitations on it for kids.
so what you're saying though is that those 60-minute and 75-minute bus routes, those are shorter times than what we've had traditionally in the past.
Depends on where you are in the district.
Okay.
For people who are further away from schools, it's going to be a shorter time. People who are closer to schools, it could be a little bit longer time.
So I guess I'm just, because you showed the slide of the revenue versus expenditure. So Do we have estimates, though, as to whether we're going to be spending the same amount of money, or, I mean,
In a two-tier system,
right, or
we
is
would
it going to be
spend,
the
we would
same?
spend much less money. We would spend, for certain, less time. And so part of when you lease a bus or when you lease time on a bus, you're paying for the amount of time, the driver time, the bus time. Then the other piece is miles. And if you are eliminating a third tier, in theory, you're eliminating a third of the miles from your overall. Now, that's also going to hit your reimbursement, but you're also going to be spending less money.
So you're anticipating a smaller deficit then through that?
Yes, yes. I don't know that we will hit that entire deficit number.
Right.
I think so much of that depends on state reimbursement, depends on other factors that are a little bit outside of our control, students in private placement that we do door-to-door for. So there's a lot of other pieces of this outside of just the regular education routes, but that's the largest chunk of what we're doing.
So the reimbursement, though, that's factored into the revenue
Correct.
side. So we do tax for transportation, but we also get reimbursed as
Correct.
well. So how much of that total is what is taxes versus?
Dave, do you have that off the top of your head? 50-50? 50-50 local money, 50-50 state money.
Yeah, I mean, we got, is that right? We got 3 million from the state then this past year and then we got about 2.7, I was looking at the budget, 2.7 million. Okay.
Several years ago, we did a revamp of the transportation and we did eliminate some stops.
You did,
had
you
some-
eliminated between 10 and 15 total routes.
Okay, I
At
didn't
that time.
remember numbers. I just remember we asked some students to walk further away or having, buses just staying on the main road and people coming out of subdivisions and things like that. Did we just over time, as things, subdivisions got built and this and that we've just kind of not given in, but changed our habits, and now we're gonna change them back to when we made that dramatic change then, or?
We didn't add more routes back. So the routes that we have are pretty much the same number from when we made the cuts. So the
But as new subdivisions got built.
there may have been more stops. There may have been more
Okay.
more convenient stops. There are things like that.
Well, in my own neighborhood, there's been a turnover of families. So when we moved in, there were a lot of families with older children, and now we're flush with younger children in the neighborhood, which is great. But I know that that's changed our needs,
Yeah.
even within our subdivision.
And what we've been able to do with SIUE and what we'll have routes established by fall. So new routes established, not for the next school year, but to validate and verify. But we have the geocoded home and stop of every single child in the district. We know their grade level, we know their how long they've lived in the home, we know the school attendance. So there's all kinds of data that this can be used for, not just for transportation, but if we ever talk about boundary lines, if we ever talk about neighborhood schools versus the K2, 3, 5 center schools. And that's not planned at all. Don't anybody take anything into that. I'm just telling you, we have a lot of data that we used to have, and somehow that fell off, and now we're back rebuilding that database that's even more robust than it was before. Any other questions about transportation?
I reserve the right to ask.
Of course.
Right.
Of course. And this will come back. You'll have an opportunity to revisit it at the very end. So, okay, well then let's jump to school start times. So if you remember, part of this conversation was, this could cause a natural change in school start times. And so the board said, well, if that's the case, why don't we look at what is best practice? What is something we could do? And so that led us to where we are. So at previous meetings, I've shared a lot of data around school start times, and I've alluded to this data on this slide, but I want to at least show it, because I think sometimes the words are and the message is more powerful. The data on school start times is crystal clear. American Academy of Pediatrics, American Academy of Sleep Medicine, American Medical Association all indicate that secondary schools should start later. They should start at 8:30. The challenge that we have is that it causes a large disruption in any system, not just a District 7, any school across the nation. But this data specifically came from one of the very first school start time data sets from a high school in Rhode Island, where 201 students volunteered to move their start time from 8 to 8:30, that simple 30 minutes, and then they collected data based on that time. When they looked at that data, they found that a 30-minute later school start time led to kids having 45 more minutes of sleep a night. 39% of students ended up getting 8+ hours of sleep, a 39% increase, and 27% of less students got less than 7 hours. And so if you notice on the survey that we asked how much sleep does your child get? And I've shared the whole survey with the board so that you can kind of grapple with all of it, but we won't share all of it today. So that was one piece of data. The other piece was that a 30-minute later school start time led to kids becoming more awake, more energetic, and happier. And so you can see unhappiness fell, tiredness fell, and daytime sleepiness fell by 60%. So that was actually one of the very first data points. I want to say that was back in 2014. And since then, there have been study after study after study. So we've noticed that as we look into this more across the country, there have been large systems that have made this change. And so one of the things we've started to do is reach out to some of these systems. Cherry Creek is one that very, very large school district in Colorado that has done that change in start times, and has developed what I've heard is a playbook. And so I'm going to ask them about their playbook because I'm curious. Libertyville did this in 2018, Jackson Hole, Wyoming. In 2017, there was a study about 35,000 students that delayed their start times to 8 and 8:10. They delayed one set and had the other set not get delayed, and so they tracked the data from that, and it showed positive impact on high school students, negative impact on elementary students. The challenge that we have is in schools, anytime you do this level of research, you're using humans as the piece, and who wants to do a lot of research with kids. And so the other piece of this that I know we have talked about that's been discussed is California and Florida have both legislated later start times for high schools at 8:30 or 8:45. And right now there's been a House bill that has been proposed in Illinois. We don't think it's going to go anywhere this year, but it has said that it has indicated they would prohibit start times at high schools earlier than 8:45. So now again, there's probably going to be a lot of conversation in Illinois before that would ever get considered, but it's at least, we're not the only ones having this conversation and thinking about what that looks like.
The one thing I wanted to add is that that House bill is being supported by students from this Liberty bill.
It is, that's where it originated.
I just read about that.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
Yes, but Libertyville, I was looking them up, and I had looked up about 15 schools. They run an early bird science class, right? That's 68 minutes long.
That I don't know.
So I looked at, but they also have, they start at their first hour at 8:45. And I think it would be interesting to look a little bit into how they run that early bird science class as well, because they have one of those that they said starts at 8:22, which is 68 minutes long. So
So they do a tack on the first hour.
Right.
Interesting. Okay.
So,
yeah.
that'd be great for
Might-
like an AP class.
Mhm.
Yeah, sure.
yes,
would.
and that's what we're talking about. How do you accomplish all you're going to accomplish in lab science and
Right.
stuff like that?
Well, we'll talk about the school day in just a minute.
Okay,
That's
okay,
the next
all right,
conversation.
sorry.
We'll get there.
We're jumping
We'll get
ahead of problems.
there. So we've continued to modify these times and really work with our partners at First Student to look at what is the true window of time between the tiers. We talked about our window of time between high school and middle school is 35 minutes, but our window between middle school and elementary is 80 minutes, and we think we can shrink that down. And so I mentioned earlier the students eating breakfast at school. One of the things we've been very intentional about is getting buses to school 30 minutes before school starts to give students the opportunity to eat breakfast. And I said that to, I think, one of our central office teams, and our director of food service said, hey, our high school breakfast participation is really low. And I said, well, like how low? Like under 100 kids low. And she said, so I'm going to tell you is you're creating this problem of getting kids to school super early, but very few of them are taking advantage of eating breakfast, and the numbers aren't much different at middle school. So that's also then caused some conversations about how can we make breakfast more accessible for kids. Maybe you don't go line up in the cafeteria. Maybe it's a grab and go as you're walking in the door and you just scan your ID and you move on, because you have to have your ID to get in. So we're talking about some efficiencies there where maybe we can shave time so that you're not there 30 minutes before the school day starts.
And back to the transportation thing, since living near Hamel, I mean, the time it takes for my kids to get on the bus to get to school in time for breakfast is, I mean, it's not even worth getting on the
Right,
bus.
right.
So that drives the ridership as well.
Yeah. So these are the, I'm going to say, extreme draft times that we've settled on. We've committed that it wouldn't be any later than 9 o'clock. It wouldn't be any earlier than 7:30. But the more we can do to squeeze those times together, we're going to do. So those times would probably not come out until sometime next year. But the thing the board's going to be asked to commit to is that we are making that shift so we can continue moving forward in that. As I mentioned at our last meeting, we've done a ton of feedback opportunities, continue to have our monthly discussion groups, and I've had 4 to 6 people come to every single one of them. I think I've got another one later this month, the 21st maybe. If you want to attend that, call Carrie. But we've asked for feedback and have really not gotten a lot of critical feedback. We've gotten great questions and some concerns and apprehensions, but the feedback overall has been really positive in the discussion groups. We did steering committee, we talked to students at the very beginning, but then we did our most recent community survey. And our most recent community survey ended up really surprisingly a little bit more of a 50-50 split across the board. So 50% of individuals that responded agreed with that recommendation for early start times for elementary, and 50% did not. And that came out loud and clear in the comments as well, where some people would say, wow, eliminating the need for morning kid zone for me would be great. And then other people would say, wow, you just created an afternoon childcare problem for me because I don't go to kid zone and I won't have a high school student to watch my kids.
So we're 100% of those people with students in school? The 100% of the respondents on
No,
that
that was
top
the
line?
total respondents.
Just total respondents?
Yes.
So,
We can separate it down by elementary parents.
okay.
So we can show you that. I will tell you that the percentage doesn't change dramatically because
Okay.
I've looked at where's the breakdown. It really just doesn't. It shifts a little bit, but not a whole lot.
Okay.
50% of people that responded agreed with the proposed start times 8:45 and 9 for secondary schools. 55% overall agreed that elementary should be earlier. So what that told me was there's about 5% of people that feel like elementary should be earlier, but maybe not that early. And secondary can be later, and maybe not that. Maybe that's fine. 59% of people indicated they were satisfied with the current elementary start times, and this one absolutely shocked me. 52% of respondents indicated they were satisfied with current high school start times. That one really surprised me because I've not talked to anybody that loves the current high school start time.
You pointed before I said.
Yes.
Said something.
My question is, who are those respondents? Are they the parents or the students?
This is all parent respondents unless the students took the survey as a result of getting it somewhere.
Well,
Go ahead.
well, I was just going to say, I mean, I do know of individuals, though, that took the survey like 10 times. So,
I heard
and
that was out
multiple
there.
people took the survey
What?
I heard that was
like
out there.
10 plus times.
That's not
So,
how it's supposed to work.
I mean, and I'm not,
That's not a good idea.
well, no, and I'm not saying a survey is not a good idea. I'm just saying that, I mean, I think for us as a board to rely a decision on just the survey
Right,
results,
right.
I think there may be an opportunity where we just need to go out and hear for ourselves, have some community outreach where the board, shows up and hears, what comments are made. Because I think also the number of individuals you had reaching out or participating now, I think it's becoming more relevant to people that we're actually seriously talking about that. So,
Yeah, for sure.
Which drives also the multiple responses as
Yeah,
well. So.
yeah. And so just to that point, we did have 2,999 total people in some way, shape, or form responded to the question. So out of those, 2,219 were parents. To the question about, I'll just give you an example. Being satisfied with your elementary start time, 989 indicated they were satisfied out of 1,300.
But
So-
were they only parents of kids that age, or were they all parents? Is there a way to frame that? Because what if somebody is a high schooler, they're satisfied with how, like, when elementary starts? It's a moot point because they only have an elementary kid. Does that make sense?
Well, I
Yes.
think Jill said it best a couple of meetings ago. I mean, depending on where your kid is, I mean, you
Yeah.
give them the survey, 4 different years, it's going to be a
So that's a
completely different
bias of
response
the-
each
Yeah.
time. So,
Yeah.
I mean, and that's my story, because when my kids were first starting kindergarten, we lived in Cleveland, and I was aghast that my kindergartner had to sit at the bus stop at 7:15 in the morning to get ready for school. I thought that was horrendous. And then when I had the opportunity to talk with the superintendent, and the superintendent was like, as long as our flagship building, the high school, is driving the notoriety of the district,
Right.
and I get such great results with having an 8:45 start time because of how well they do on the SAT and ACT, I will continue to have it the way they go. So that kind of reframed it for me. I was like, oh, well, okay, that
It's
makes
not
sense.
all about Bob.
Yeah,
Exactly.
exactly.
And those kids are going to go out.
And it usually is too.
So Lynn, 49.7% of parents that are high school said that they were satisfied with the start times. So it dropped a
Of
little
high
bit.
school.
Of high school, okay, dropped a little bit.
I guess just looking at all those numbers, and like you said, you had sent them to us
Yeah.
previously, and you had this slide here. I think these decisions would be so much easier if it was 25-75 or
100%.
20-80.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All of these
That's
50-50
so
things,
Yeah.
it's just really hard. I mean, even if, there were people that did
Yeah.
it multiple times.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When you've got
More
3,000
people
survey
didn't do that.
results, that's not going to skew those numbers since they're so close to
No.
begin with. I'm just really, it's
And-
going
and
to
the-
be our
and the-
decision.
And the comments spoke to that. So we had comments that said, you know what, you're elected officials, make a decision. There were comments that said, don't you understand the impact on me? And you have to consider both, right? You have to
Right,
consider the
right.
greater good, and you also have to consider the impact on the individual family, child, parent, things like that. So we asked a couple other questions about, and I think this one's pretty telling too, benefits that you see in changing start times. And 32% of people said, I see 0 benefits. So almost a third said there were no benefits. Obviously, the other things that came out were pretty similar to the other surveys that we had. And then concerns around changing school start times. 50% of people impact on overall family routine because it's a massive change for a family to do this. But you can also see the impact of elementary students going home earlier, going to school earlier, going home earlier, athletics, high school after school job opportunities, so on and so forth. And then the other question that we asked is which factor is the most important factor that should be taken into consideration? And 59% of people said what's best for students in learning. So, and then we had potential impact on athletics, impact on District 7 families, and impact on District 7 staff members. So, but the vast majority was what's best for students in learning. So, when I went to the comments, and again, with the 3,000 responses, we get a ton of them. We had to do some summarizing. But the main concerns expressed were around after-school care, the change in routines, and the impact on after-school activities. Those were the 3 biggest concerns expressed. And the positive feedback was support of the research, not needing before-school care, and wow, if this really has the positive impact on academics and health, that makes a lot of sense to me. So one of the things that we'll talk about at the very end is we'll talk about how we implement if we move forward with this. And I think that a big piece of this is on educating people of the positive impact of what can happen, and then really listening and helping work through some of the nuances of whether it's before school care, after school care, whatever it is that we can help navigate. And time is the variable there.
And some people might not have
So-
thought all of those answers through, how it would
course.
really impact them.
Right.
Of
Oh,
course.
yeah, my neighbor would be
Yeah.
able to take care of my child at
Yeah.
a certain time or whatever, or, so, yeah.
But if I'm an elementary parent and I've gone to work at 8:30 for the last 6 years because it worked really well, and all of a sudden I have 2 more years and I have to take my kids to school at 7:15, that's a big change.
Yeah.
You get
But,
that.
I mean, on the reverse side, our kids go from K through 6, 8:30, and then suddenly they're hitting middle school and high school.
Yeah.
And
And we hear about that change every year too.
we do,
as well.
I mean, so we do make all of those changes as parents
Yes.
through our kids' lifetimes. So,
Other questions about the start times? Then we're going to shift to our third topic.
so I would like, I think, to see, a couple questions that I got over the weekend were, how does it impact after-school activities? Are we going to talk about that in the next set of slides, or?
So no,
Can
we
we-
talked about that at our retreat a little bit.
Mhm.
Obviously, if you have a 2:00 practice now and you don't get out till 3:30, you're not having a 2:00 practice. So you're having a 3:45 practice, and so that 3:45 practice probably goes till 6:30. The biggest thing that I've heard from the athletic programs that we have is we have to be just really thoughtful about practice times, because right now we really don't have a practice. We're supposed to not have practice after 9 o'clock. I know some of them go later than that, but that probably will get extended. That probably would be now at 10 o'clock, because you've got to have windows of time for gym space and field space. That's probably the biggest level of impact, is when we think about our students who can go to practice and then be home by 5:30 or 6 o'clock. That's a big difference than going to practice after school and being home by 7 o'clock. Now, you don't have to be up at 6:30 out the door for school. You have a little bit more time, but just depends on where's the time more valued. And for a family, that's probably going to be at the dinner table in the evenings, things like that.
You know, when we moved to Oklahoma, I used to take my kids to before school care, about 7:30 in the morning, and listening to the band play at the local high school at 7 o'clock in the morning. So I know that in some states that have a later start time, some activities have their practice before the school day starts, as opposed to the end of the day.
And we
which
did
would
ask.
then help with
We did ask that in the
too.
first survey, and about a third coaches, I believe it
But
was.
doesn't that counter the reason for doing it
In
to
some
begin
ways.
with?
In some ways.
But for some students who like to be involved in athletics and fine arts, they got to do both.
Yeah.
It allowed them to participate in band, but then maybe, run track in the afternoon. So it actually widened yes, it kind of defeated the purpose on the sleep part, but it also opened up the possibilities for what they could participate in. So.
Josie and Amelia, do you have anything to add to this?
Well, one of my friends in Texas, they have this thing where they start school at 9, but their first hour is part of their sport. So if he's a golfer, it can be he starts with his first hour being golf, but he starts practice before school starts a little, 8:30 or 8. So it just goes into first hour. Or you could do that at the end of the day, and it works really well for him. So.
this is not just impacting students, it's impacting, the coaches and the mentors.
Right.
Whether, it's sports or fine arts or.
For sure.
And so I'm kind of curious too as to how their schedules and are going to be changed and.
It would be significant, for sure. When you had a 5:30 second practice, that's now going to be 6:30 or 7. And that third practice is going to go later. And I know we do have a lot of families that do that. That's just part of the large high school and having lots of sports that need lots of practice space.
But didn't you also say that kind of on a little bit more of an upside of that is you have people who are teachers in elementary school that now can become coaches
Certainly.
on that level because their
Certainly.
responsibilities are completed earlier.
And high school kids are definitely up at 10 still. That's an easy time for them. That's when they're thriving probably.
It is. That's what
The adults
Yeah.
that supervise, that's where it becomes,
It is.
Yeah.
their bedtimes
You're
are
right.
9:30.
Yeah.
I do think, though, that there's plenty of examples that we could look to if this is something we decide to do, where we can look at what other districts and other states are doing with their
Absolutely.
schedule.
And there are plenty of districts that have gone down this path that we can learn from and model, not just the logistics end, but how you support families and how you communicate it and everything like that.
Sure, and I was curious myself because I thought, how many schools are actually ending their school day in the 3 o'clock hour? And Stevenson does at 3:25, Hinsdale Central at 3:30, Glenbrook South at 315, New Trier, 310, Vernon Hills, 310. And the list goes on. So I looked at 15 schools, and Evanston, 335, Libertyville, 325.
There's
So-
also a distinct difference in the conversation when we talk about 330 or after 330. That seemed to be a
benchmark.
tipping point, which is why you saw that we moved high school to the earlier tier, so they're 8:45 to 3:30, and then or 3:35, and then middle school would be 9 to 3:45. So.
And I did some research as well, but I was looking more on a local level
Mhm.
as far as, well, conference schools or just neighboring schools and things like that. And there were several of those that went until that 3:30
3:30.
and stuff. Some didn't, some went to 2:50, 2:10 and stuff like that.
Sure.
But there's a lot of them, and I think that was part of some conversations were, how does it affect not just the practice, but I'll say a baseball game or something like that,
Sure.
or the freshman sophomore games that would start earlier in the day. And I don't know how those schools do it as far as, compared to what our schools do, but apparently it is doable.
And I don't want to find ourselves in a position where we're having to do something because the state says we have to. Because if we have to react rather than be proactive, it's not going to go well.
I did say that to somebody today, that would really stink.
Yeah.
It would not be good.
Well-
Again, I don't think that's going to happen in the near future, but it is,
Right.
it's at least on the table.
Potential.
Right, but if we're making, like the survey says, making a decision that's right for student learning and student overall good health and well-being, why wait? Not that that's, making a
Right,
decision,
right.
it's just, those are things to think about.
And one of the things we'll talk about at the very end after we get through the third section is the timeline of making that decision. So our goal was to have this done in January. Obviously, we're in March. But much of that is because of the logistics that start. So sports scheduling and sports time scheduling starts in May for 26, 27. So we start putting together game schedules, times. Obviously, our teams need time to work through some of the logistics. I know our next team that's going to come up would love to have this decision made yesterday, because there's so much that goes into the planning pieces of it. And you don't want to get so far down the road and find out you've done all the work, in vain. So at some point that's it too. So if it's okay, we're going to shift over to our third topic. I'm going to invite Molly Rice and Tara Fox and Kyle Stewart to come up and join me. And I'm going to kick it off, and then we're going to tag team the rest of it. So if you guys want to make your way up here. About a little over 2 years ago, we started a conversation about the high school day. And there were several factors that were really leading into this conversation. One was a book study that we started that talked about having a high school day that meets the needs of all students. Part of this was a new world language requirement that still is coming. We've been trying to massage it for 2 years, but it's still on the radar, and it's still coming. Our strategic plan calls for community service as part of our graduation requirement, and that was something that came out of our strategic plan, so that's an element. And then we know that for years, and I know this board has heard it as well, there are students who want to participate in certain activities that can't if they don't take early bird or summer school. And we also know that then creates an equity gap in opportunities, because they either can't get there, or they have to pay for it and they can't pay for it, or there's just not enough time. And so we have students that, whether it's world language, fine arts, whatever it is, career pathway things, there's just not enough time in the day. And I know we were having this conversation in my household, and my son-in-law, I hope they're not watching, but he said, oh my gosh, why in the world would you go to school at 6:15 in the morning? And my daughter said, that's the only way I could be in band and get all my classes in that I wanted to take, and I didn't want to take summer school. And so she took early bird most of her time at the high school. So it's experiences like that we've lived as a family that I get for families who don't want to miss summer vacation, or who don't want to get up at 6 o'clock and take their child to school, or take them to elementary school to catch a bus to go to the high school, any of those things. So all of those things kind of led into this team, and I was involved with the team for a year, and then this year I handed off to Tara and said, Tara, you're going to be a much better leader at this than I am, and I think the product will speak for itself. So I think you'll see some great things. And so we'll jump in, because at this point, Tara got the team together. Molly has been on the team from day one. Kyle's been on the team from day one. We probably had 25 teachers staff members at the high school that have really met religiously, monthly, to talk through the different aspects of what this would look like. And I think the tipping point was, for me, at least in the conversation I was having with Tara, was this first slide, not this one, the next one, which is, what are the things that are mandates, goals, and non-negotiables? Because that became the talking point for how do we continue to come back and make sure that we're accomplishing this. So with that, I'm going to hand it to you guys, and I'll bring you the clicker.
Okay.
And I'll probably jump in.
So when the team was kind of handed off this year, we decided to take sort of a three-tiered approach. So we have a combination of, thank you, of the curriculum department coupled with our special education department, because there's some very specific things that we need to look at for our special education students and how this would impact them as well, combined with our high school administration to really kind of tackle this this project. And so when we brought the team back together, and that team has kind of ebbed and flowed throughout the past couple of years, where we have, coaches in season not able to attend. Part of that is, kind of the timing and that. But we have a core team that has really worked over a couple of years. And so when we got back together to kind of start, we had to sit down and say, okay, what are we going to wrap everything around here? And this is where we came up with our list of kind of the mandates, goals, and specifically the non-negotiables. So we knew when we were making our decisions, if we could go back to this list and say, okay, is this meeting something on this list, or is this aligning to the things that we said that we want to make sure that we're focused on, then we know we can move forward and it's a good decision to make. So that just kind of helps to focus our attention. And so one of them was the thought that all students must thrive at EHS, not just make it through. So we had lots of really great, sometimes hard conversations about what's broken or not broken, and that, well, you know what, we have kids that would do just fine. We don't want them to do just fine, right? We want them to actually thrive. We want EHS to be a place where they want to be, where they look forward to being, and where they're having some great opportunities that will help them moving forward. So then we said that our school structure, kind of what Dr. Shelton was just talking about, cannot continue to create an equity gap. So we have to make sure that we don't have a structure that forces kids one way or the other. They're forced to either take a summer school or forced to take early bird, especially the one that's at 6:15, in order to get in the things that they want to do. Now, granted, there are some things that are going to have to be a choice, right? You can't do everything, but students should be able to take a world language and an elective and not have to take summer school or early bird. So those are just some of the things that we thought of or that we worked through with that. We must meet the changing needs of our students and prepare them for post-secondary. So making sure that we are looking at our students now, our current students. We know that things are not the same when I started years ago, and that what students need and the output that society needs is different. And so we need to make sure that we're looking at that. Also looking at all mandates. So Dr. Shelton started talking a little bit about the world language mandate that's coming down. Career pathways, we need to have career pathways for students, and an actually identified pathway with courses that meet that SEL requirement that we anticipate will be coming. And then we also need to make sure we have a structure for student support, both academic and social emotional. Andrea talked a little bit about that, about the Second Step program and just other things that we need to set in place at the high school. We have had things like writing lab, where students can come in to get extra help, but an actual dedicated intervention, either time or class, is something that we've not had previously at the high school. And then we also must identify concerns and factors that impact the adults in the organization and plan for them. So if we want our students to thrive, our adults, our teachers also have to thrive. So that's another thing that we need to make sure that we are kind of focusing on. So this group, once we took that, we decided that before we could make some specific decisions, we had to have a structure. So we started there. We actually divided up into small groups, and we said, all right, here are our non-negotiables. Now, with your group, come up with a structure that meets all of those, that doesn't cause an equity gap, that ensures that our students are thriving and all that sort of thing. So
The interesting thing that came out of that was that we had, 2 options?
3.
Or we had 3 options, and then a group came up with a 4th?
Yeah, and then we said we don't like
Right.
any of these.
We said, we like pieces of all of
Yeah.
them, but how about this? One group came up with, and everybody was like, that's it, that's the one. So then that, it was really great because it was good collaboration, people from across departments, and I guess I should speak to the team a little bit. We have a great team that represents all of our departments, some department chairs, some teachers, counselors, administrators, members of the curriculum department, central office. So it's just a really kind of good broad group of people who can work together and bring in different perspectives. So once we kind of all said, yes, that's the one, then we started working through what would that structure look like, so then we could put all the pieces together with that. So I'll let Molly talk a little bit about this.
Sure. So we looked at a lot of different examples from other schools and tried to do what she said, like to take pieces that we liked from those and try and put them together. And this is where we have landed. For context, currently our 6 periods are 54 minutes each, except for first hour is 60 minutes because we have a 6-minute period built in there for morning announcements, pledge, Friday video announcements, those kinds of things happen during that time. Okay, so on the left we've got every day except Wednesday because we still have the early release time on Wednesday. This is assuming we start at 7:15. Obviously, if the start times change, we'd just be shifting. But we've cut it down to 50 minutes. We really, really did not want to go under 50 minutes or under 40 minutes on Wednesdays. 4 minutes is a little bit more manageable than 6 minutes or 8 minutes even. And we also, the highlighted 5th hour in the middle, that one is longer because it also builds in a lunch period. We were trying to find a way to avoid any classes starting in class, going to lunch, and coming back. And really with this structure, it just wasn't going to happen. But we've changed it from having 4 lunches and reduced that down to 3. So there are fewer classes that are interrupted, and they have a bigger segment instead of like 12 minutes when they come back, in which case a lot of students might have a hard time getting back. We now have, a whole half of a class. So we've got the 3 lunches down below, and all of those are built into 5th hour. It does extend the day from our current end time for students is 1:45, and this goes to 2:05 on those 4 days. So it does add 20 minutes. We also have shortened the passing period to 5 minutes instead of 6. It is a pretty big building. We had 5-minute passing periods during COVID, and I know that there were fewer students in the building, but what we found was that most students really didn't have a hard time doing that, and honestly, it kind of reduces a little bit of congestion in like the bathrooms or some of the hallways that aren't monitored as often, those kinds of things. So we feel like we really can, the priority should be the instructional minutes and to take a minute away from the passing period. On Wednesdays, like I said, we have the shortened time. So we saw some schools that had, like one of them was like Glen Bard Hour was one that they called it. So we called it Tiger Time. And basically it's 1 day a week, and it's going to be kind of an intervention period that's built in, and we'll talk a little bit more specifically about what happens during that time. But that's going to be the time that, I'm going to skip, yep. Is it on this one? Wait. Yeah, here we go. The Tiger Time down at the bottom, where we can, anytime like counselors need to come and make announcements to classes, they can come do it during that time. Any kind of direct SEL instruction can happen during that time. When we were building this, there were still kind of questions about what that piece would look like. We currently, several times we've had one particular hour has been interrupted more than others because students need to take surveys, or recently we had to do the tech checks to make sure that the kids can get ready with the test nav that they're using for ACT and or pre-ACT. And so like things that kind of interrupt and they're taking time away from one of the classes, this is a great time for that to happen. We would also, since first hour is not longer anymore, we would also move the video announcements on Wednesdays to this time, and we'll have, so instead of doing Friday morning announcements, that'll be on Wednesdays. We will also
have our normal daily announcements, which are always posted on Schoology. We'll also be like scrolling on screens in the Commons and that sort of thing. So students still have access to them, but they don't necessarily need to be read, especially when a lot of them are read for 6 days in a row, just to remind students every day. So, okay, so that's, sorry, I'm going back here. I just want to make sure I hit all the things that were in that section. Early bird, by extending to 7 periods, this can reduce or eliminate the need for early bird. And contractual day for teachers, for staff does not change. It's still 7 3/4 hours. We just have an extended student day within that. Passing periods we talked about. As far as what the teaching day looks like, and Dr. Shelton has an example later in the slides, but basically a lot of teachers who already are kind of near that limit of number of student contacts in a day most of them they wouldn't be teaching necessarily a new course, but they would be teaching another course of something they already taught, and the students would be a little bit more spread out. We also have a lot of other things that teachers can be doing that I think Kyle will be talking about shortly. Okay, we kind of talked about these already. So, yeah, and this is just a little bit more detailed of the Wednesday schedule all on the same screen, but nothing different than what we saw before. It also, well, oh no, lunch is still 5th hour because we moved to 5th hour. Yeah, and then our PLC time is 50 minutes till the end of the day. Okay. And then Kyle?
So Molly hit a lot on the purpose of the Tiger Time, and an additional thing that Molly didn't touch on is Tiger Time is going to give the students another adult in the building besides their teachers that can act as like a mentor. She said that they can follow up on some of the SEL lessons, but just having another adult that they can relate to, that they can go to with anything beyond their 6 or 7 teachers. And the Tiger Time is very valuable. I think we will find out with all the different things, for lack of a better term, that we pull kids out of class for, or that we take up class, that we can utilize the Tiger Time for will be very, very valuable for the instructional minutes that we will no longer lose. Graduation requirements. Graduation requirements with a 6-period day currently is 20 credits. Adding an hour, we very easily could have gone 24, but not wanting students to have the thought that they need to add a class with all the other options, we kind of went at the halfway point, so we went with 22. We are very low with other high schools in Illinois. An example, I've had a couple of examples in my 5 years in administration, but last spring I had, without getting into specifics, a student that was looking to transfer to Quincy December of their senior year, and Quincy has graduation requirements of 24 credits. So that family was forced with a hard decision of, if we make this move right now, my child might not graduate on time because they could not reach the graduation requirements. So that will kind of even the playing field a little bit, but more importantly, not going with 24, going with just 22. When we think of the pathways, we think of the structured study hall that we're going to get into, where students have the opportunity to take 7 courses, but they aren't necessarily mandated by the graduation requirements to take that 7th course. One other goal that has been a part of the strategic plan is community service, and one thing that we put in here is 24 hours of community service for a student within their 4 years of high school before graduation. We don't have anything in concrete, but there's definitely ideas that we have on structuring that. We're going to talk a little bit about peer tutoring, offering some community service for students to peer tutor during their structured study halls and things like that. So with that 7 period, we kind of call it a flex, where these are options for students. Students can take a 7th curricular course. Our 9th graders, that is the class that gets hit the hardest with graduation requirements. They need to take four cores. One of the periods is taken up with PE and driver's ed, and now they only have one option for an elective. That could be any of the fine and performing arts. That could be world language, which I think it's the current 5th graders which will be a graduation requirement. So it's really hard to design a ninth grade schedule with the current fifth graders 4 years from now, and world language is going to be a graduation requirement. Intervention. We kind of strategically offer structured intervention, but a lot of it is expecting students to stay after school. We do have the writing lab, but one of the periods that we offer with the writing lab is early bird, getting back to that 6:25 arrival at school. And then structured study hall, where students can take a study hall, and then they will also be students in there that can act as tutors. Instead of offering study hall just with study hall monitors, they will be with teachers, and we can strategically place students and change students within the same class period from teacher to teacher so they can get specific help on their courses. And then the different career pathways that's been mentioned before. Here's just kind of a slide that can kind of goes through 8 examples of what students would take with that extra course. Credit recovery is something that, unfortunately, we have seniors that if we don't have a credit recovery, they're going to have a hard time graduating in 4 years. We have been able to piece that together the last couple of years and offer it through Edgenuity. But this would give a structured time they can go and they can get intervention or tiered support to help them get to their graduation requirements. And then with the staff, their 6th assignment could be a 6th academic course. We feel that this would not be adding a prep. As Molly mentioned, let's say an English teacher, if they're teaching 5 Lit and Comp 1s, then we would probably have them teach a 6 Lit and Comp 1. So it's not adding a prep to teachers, it would be adding very few preps to teachers. Department chairs, they have a lot of responsibilities, and this would free up a period where they can do department chair work. Proctor and a testing center, AP coordinators, that there's a lot of responsibilities that fall with that. We mentioned structured study hall. We would have teachers oversee the credit recovery and tutoring, tier 2 support, and then roving substitutes to help with our substitute issue that we have in high school.
Kyle, can I add something real quick
Yes.
about the tutoring, because I don't think it's on another slide. So with the tutoring, we have the English lab that is available during a period, and I think we have an early bird one as well. But we looked specifically at math and English as the ones that identified the most need, and we really, really would like to be able to offer at least a math and an English tutoring room every hour of the day, where a kid who either has a study hall or has another class and they finish something and they really need help on a particular subject or getting caught up can just drop into that. The teacher who's in charge of credit recovery would be doing that at the same time. So if that's me, I might have a couple students assigned in my room working through the credit recovery program in whatever courses they're doing, but I also have availability for any other students who come in that just need some math help right then. We did talk about also offering like languages or science or social studies. The need is not quite as great because we don't have as many students struggling there. So we wouldn't offer those every hour of the day, but we would look to offer 1 or 2. So that's kind of the idea of that tutoring piece along with credit recovery and having that, that option for students.
All right, so as Kyle and Molly have both they talked a little bit about.
I'm sorry that was there.
I didn't see it. Talked a little bit about an intervention structure, and most of what you're seeing right now are the slides that we presented to the high school staff as a team to show them like this is the structure that we're looking at bringing to the board for support. So while not every detail is in line yet, because we don't know yet that we're moving forward with this, we do have several different options for intervention. So in addition to what Molly and Kyle talked a little bit about, kind of that real-time support, going to a tutor for English and math, we would also have interventions that we call them tier 2. They're probably more closely aligned to tier 3 once we actually get the structure, where we would have a screening tool similar to FastBridge, or potentially FastBridge, that would identify those students coming out of 8th grade that are significantly behind, that need those targeted interventions. And so then one period during the day for those students could be actually continuing with the targeted interventions that, maybe in middle school when we look at like math seminar and reading seminar, then it stops, right? And they go to high school, they take that FastBridge test at the end of 8th grade, and if they're behind, we share that information, but it doesn't really go anywhere as far as actually targeted intervention. So that's something that we could definitely do with that flex as well for certain students. And we talked a little more specifically about ensuring that intervention was a full credit, because we don't want an intervention to then cause students to get behind, and then we had a credit recovery issue, and so then we have kind of a cyclical issue going on with those students who are already behind. So, and then we have the other option of that kind of makeup testing as needed tutoring, and then Edgenuity being that credit recovery. So it just broadens that intervention piece for students who need it, and that the tier 2/3 piece that I talked about with FastBridge and identifying those skill deficits would probably only be for 9th and 10th graders, and then from kind of trying to bridge that skill gap. That's not early, but as early as we can at the high school level, and then kind of pushing to different support junior and senior year. So then I pretty much just said all this, but that structured math and ELA, that diagnostic tool used to assess in the spring of the prior year, and then students would be assessed continually through the beginning, middle, and end of the year to determine that if they're making progress and meeting their targets. That full credit as an elective for the time in that class, and then having specific proficiency levels for the recommended skills that then students would work on additional skills beyond that. So not like in the middle of the semester you would be kind of out and go somewhere else, but then there would be additional skills that they could either continue to close that gap or even achieve kind of beyond where they are.
So we've been asked a lot of questions about FTE, classroom space, student choices, what's the schedule look like? So I want to provide a couple of examples of what that would look like. And Kyle and Molly alluded to the Lit and Comp 1 example, where a Lit and Comp 1 teacher, we offer 16 sections of Lit and Comp 1. They teach 5 Lit and Comp 1 courses just repeated throughout the day. And so in this model, the ones that are especially our graduation requirements, we would want to lower class size in. So rather than offer 5 Lit and Comp sections, we would offer additional ones, and that teacher would just pick up an extra Lit and Comp. We also have the example of a social studies teacher who has 3 psychs and 2 sociology classes. In this model, they pick up another sociology class because of students being able to take those electives. And so just giving you an idea, now that's not going to necessarily be the case in every single situation, because there are going to be new courses proposed, for example. There are going to be new opportunities. I know we will see, and we are already seeing with some of our new course enrollments, we're seeing the student desire to take certain things shift. And so as we do that, we're having to really go back and look at our FTE, but the total FTE doesn't change, the need changes. And so until that need is met, we might have to say, I'm sorry, we have no more sociology classes, which is what we say now, we just still have more opportunity than we had before. Does that make sense? Go ahead and click the next one. The other thing that everyone asks is, well, are students just going to take, where are they going to have all these new courses to choose from? Yes and no. We add new courses to our high school repertoire every single year. One of our most recent program examples was American Sign Language. We've added over the last 2 years and has done really, really well. And so in registration this year, we asked students to identify an optional 7th course that they would take. Now, I want to put a little asterisk on this, because I know I've heard that some students really thought they were going to take a 7th course. And I've heard some students just pick whatever because it doesn't matter because I'm not taking a 7th course, right? But it's data that we have, and it gives us something to be able to speak to. And so I just grabbed some of those numbers and put them up on this slide so you could get an idea of what the largest numbers of things that students chose were. Obviously, art and design, child development, business and econ, Spanish on top of Spanish 1 numbers, Ancient world history, that one really surprised me. We had 41 eighth graders that would take ancient world history as an additional social studies class, and then food nutrition. Now, some of these offerings will still be limited by staffing or space. And Kyle and I talked through a great example of culinary arts today. You know, we have 2 labs. And so if we offer a 7th period in those 2 labs, we're gonna have 40 spots. That's it. Unless we build a 3rd lab, that's all we're gonna be able to offer. But there are other courses that may not be as space dependent that you could offer in other ways, shapes, and forms. So just gives you an idea of the flavor of what our students were selecting as their potential 7th option. Some of the things that didn't go up that kind of surprised me in the fine arts, some of the art and design and painting, ceramics went up quite a bit. Band and choir went up a tiny bit, but not a whole lot. World languages went up significantly. So I think we'll see a lot of that.
Okay, so like I said before, we presented to the staff in December, correct? Yeah. December. We presented to the staff in December and then asked for their feedback. So kind of circled back to our non-negotiables and then asked for them to give us feedback on to what extent do you agree that the proposed structure for EHS meets the determined non-negotiables. And then we asked questions for each one. And then we took all of their feedback. They also had the opportunity to leave us comments, and we took that back to the team. And we took 2 full days where we just kind of dove into that data. We looked at it, we made some kind of tweaks to different things that we were doing, and then we sent a communication back out to staff to say, this was your feedback, here's what we have done as a team, and then here are our next steps moving forward. So just to give you some information about their input. So we took all of the questions, actually I take that back. The first 5 questions were all student focused. So we summarized all of those because the responses were almost identical in all 5 of those. And so the bullet points of, does our structure meet all students will thrive, our school structure cannot continue to create an equity gap, the changing needs of our students, meeting the mandates, and having a structure for support. 84.3% of our staff agreed that our structure was meeting those, and 15.6% disagreed. And then when we took that and we looked at the last question, which was we must identify the concerns and factors that impact the adults in the organization, the response was a little bit different, right? So now we've got about 67% of our staff that agree that the structure does meet that, and 33.3% that disagree. So we knew that one of the first things that we needed to focus on was teacher support and how we can ensure that we are meeting the needs of our teachers in making this change. So, here are some things that we knew we needed to consider as we plan for implementation. And again, we sent out a communication back out to our staff to say, these are the things that we're going to focus on, and then I'll kind of share with you where our committee has gone since then, because we're still kind of in a little bit of a state of limbo, right, of how we're moving forward. So clear and consistent communication, so that staff response, even though it was still more positive, it was definitely different than the rest of it, so we knew we really had to focus on not only establishing our teacher support, but also making sure that our communication was continuous, clear, and consistent, so they knew kind of where we were in the process. Staffing support, transportation, we knew that had a factor, especially adding 20 minutes to the school day, and how does that impact the tiers. Space utilization, do we have space at the high school? So that was another question. Off-campus program offerings, so establishing not only those career pathways, but also the partnerships with community, business to give our kids just more opportunities. And then what additional course offerings do we need to ensure that we have in place?
So obviously we've talked about busing and school start times and the impact there, but one of the things that we did as a result of an earlier conversation was we did a space utilization study of the high school. Because we hear a lot that we have no space, we have no space, we have no space. But what our architect firm said is they can come in and they can actually say, are you using the right spaces for the right reasons? And are there better ways that you can use this space? And so what they showed was that we do have classroom space at the high school. Sometimes it will require movement of people. It will, it could require some people to not have a classroom on their plan, things like that. But we have the space to be able to accomplish what we want to accomplish with about 2,700 students. And that's a weighted average depending on the number of special education classes, the number of large spaces. I think there's a whole lot that goes into that, and I'm happy to send that to you. It's a really small grid with a lot of colors that looks into that. The one thing that they said was really keeping us from being able to be larger than we are from a population standpoint was the size of our commons. And the fact that there's one way to get from one side of the building to the other, and so that probably makes it feel very, very full. And I will tell you, having been in there, the time you feel like it's very, very full is typically in the commons and in the thoroughfare between A wing and CD wing. So we do have that information, and we are looking at how we can more equitably schedule this year to see what that does for spacing as we look toward a set period day.
So we have on here the committees that we must begin with specific targeted goals. So you're looking at the career pathways and alternative programming, scheduling, special populations, electives, teacher support, community service, and interventions. So at our last meeting, we kind of came together as a team and determined, while we have a really great team, this is a really huge thing that a small team cannot do on their own. So we made a decision about like what committees do we want to start within our team that we feel like we can really gain some traction and get some things going to, as a jumping off point. So our group determined that we were going to focus on 4, and that was career pathways. So we have a subgroup that is working on career pathways, special populations, so bringing in our special education department, our MEL students, our honors AP student, like all the different special populations and considering that. Teacher support was the number 1 committee that we knew had to be focused on first, and then intervention. So those are the 4 that we're kind of starting the process of identifying what additional people do we need to be at the table, because we know we need more people than just the people at the high school or even within our district, and identifying the resources that we might need and just kind of where to move forward from there.
I have a question.
Oh, good time.
The period, yes, I've been waiting. That 7-period flex schedule with the 3 lunches for 5th period, is that with the commons as they are right now, or the commons as they're going to be?
Yeah, expanded.
Okay, all right, so there's not an opportunity to go down to 2 lunches when that expansion happens? Okay.
We're about 925, Kyle, is that kind of where we ended up with CD? CD 925.
Okay. But at least it's not 4.
Correct.
So,
Correct.
okay.
So, with the credits for graduation, there are 22 credits currently?
20.
20, and then we're going to up it to 22.
Yes.
Okay, well, with that, will students still try to graduate early, or will they still want to take, what are we doing this summer school, I guess, is one of my other questions. Since now we're shifting, so they all have it during the school year, how much pressure is there to run summer school and things like that?
There's not. So we will likely eliminate summer school, especially for credit advancement, because there will no longer be a need for that.
Okay.
And then it could also eliminate early bird.
Eliminate what?
Early bird.
Early bird.
Because there's not a need for it anymore.
Okay.
And I say could because there could also be a plan where there is a, kind of an earlier period that.
Do students come in with some high school credit from 8th grade, like Spanish or algebra?
Not right now.
Not currently.
Okay, so 7 times 3 is 21. They're not going to be able to get 22 credits in 3 years
Correct.
for like a whole year graduation early. But they could graduate like a semester early.
Correct.
Okay.
So do you think you'll see a rise, and that was a good question too, because I was wondering, does that mean that we'll see a rise in students trying to graduate, seniors try to graduate this semester in December?
I think we would,
I don't think it will.
I don't think it will. And I think the goal is to ensure that we have so many opportunities and great experiences for kids that they want to stay. You know, and I realize that there's some situations that are beyond wanting to stay, but for the most part, that's what we want.
Yeah, and currently we have, when you talk about early release or.
I was just gonna talk about the career pathways. I think we have gradually added career pathways, but we're not even close to where we could be. And we are still kind of a university, college-bound prep high school. And these career pathways might these students that are wanting to graduate early to start doing the workforce, now they're gonna be able to get extra training certifications while they're in high school, to where now they can hit the ground running after high school without even going to college.
Yeah, I love that idea. My third daughter went to ground school. It's like her senior year of high school. And she still went on to college and got a degree in aviation science. So that's for everybody, which I really like about that.
So when you, I'm sorry.
I was just add that we do have, right now, as a carryover from COVID and wanting to lower the number of the buildings, we have several students that have seniors that have 1 or 2 hours of release. Either they come in late or they leave early. And we really want to encourage them to find things that they can do, like an internship or community service or these other pathways, and try to get rid of that. Because not all 16, 17-year-olds are making the best decisions for their futures when presented with, I can sleep in later. So that's another idea that we've discussed.
We also know
They may
that
be leaving the building, but they're not
Correct,
leaving,
but
they're not dismissed, they're doing
Yes.
something.
those internships can pay big dividends in terms of work experience and a resume builder. And so for students who have certain levels of training, they really truly are workforce ready, ready to start their career if they have the right experiences. And that's on us to create the structure so that they can step into that.
An example of that is ISB is starting to allow graduation required courses, for instance, construction geometry, to where that can lead to a pathway. Well, we don't have a pathway yet to have construction geometry, but we look at construction and all the jobs going on with construction. If we could offer that as a core, that's a student, maybe their sophomore year is already taken a geometry class, which is probably a dreaded course for some students. Now they have a geometry class that has a reason that they can do with construction geometry.
So when you say, right now a teacher teaches 5 courses and you're going to add a 6th, then it's the same course. And while they don't have prep, clearly they're going to have more things to grade than they would have normally had to grade by how much?
So I don't know how much more students they will have, because each class size is going to be smaller.
Shrink, okay.
Now, what extra they are going to have, they're going to have to give an extra lesson every day.
Okay.
But as far as grading, and they're going to have, the number of students is probably going to go up a little bit,
Right.
but not, we have, I wish I would have looked at it, we have 10 to 15 teachers right now that are above 150 students.
Okay.
Cap is 163.
Cap is 163, and that cap's not going to change.
Okay.
And there will be teachers who do something different in that
sure.
experience. So I just want to make sure that,
Yeah.
there will be intervention, there will be the structured study hall, there will be, even maybe working with a career pathway or as a, facilitator with the internship. So not everyone will just have the same thing, so I don't want to.
But it will be per their endorsement, correct?
Correct. Yes.
I also had a question about course options. So will adding another hour allow you to make revisions to the handbook for more class opportunities for 10th and 9th graders? Because for me, when I was a sophomore, I had trouble even filling a 6-hour schedule because all the classes I was interested in were available for 11th and 12th graders, even though they didn't have any prerequisites that would have made me ineligible.
They were just full.
Yeah, so will we be allowing more classes to be 9th and 10th graders or 10th graders?
Yes.
Yeah,
And,
so what you're saying is that, for example, when you were a sophomore, you wanted to sign up for macroeconomics, but that's only available to 11th or 12th
Yeah,
grader.
even though I had everything that I needed to be able to take it.
Right.
I was just gonna say, I really like how the Tiger Time is before lunch, because a lot of kids are in a food coma after lunch and they will not do anything. But like during Tiger Time, do people do homework too? Or is it more just like getting things done that need to get done?
I think there's going to be a lot that we utilize Tiger Time for, and I think very little of that. And it's just 20 minutes weekly, one day a week. So I don't know if there's going to be much dead time to where a student's going to be able to get homework done in that 20 minutes.
They're staying in their fourth period class, though, correct? Unless they have to leave for something specific, like intervention or something. Okay.
Yeah, we did attach that because, I mean, you're gonna have a discussion one way or the other about contacts. And so for a teacher who already is at the 155 to 160 mark, saying, okay, now your fourth hour leaves and you have an additional 20 new kids that come in,
Oh, yeah.
we have a contact problem.
And we don't lose 5 minutes during the passing
Correct.
periods.
Right.
So it
Yeah.
would take it down to 15
It
minutes
doesn't make
instead of
sense.
20.
Yeah.
And you said right now, class period time is 54 minutes?
Yes.
So you also made the comment that the instructional time or the instructional minutes are going to go up for a teacher, even though their duty day doesn't change, their...
It does. The unassigned time goes down by 130 minutes a week,
Okay.
which is
A day,
one of the
yes.
main reasons that that teacher support piece is such a big priority. And I had a conversation sitting next to you in October of 2022, and I
You did.
said, we have to address this.
You did.
Because it's not just, okay, you have 4 less minutes of class. It's a
Yeah.
big change.
Well, and it's kind of, depending on what the rest of the school districts are doing in the area, if you've got fewer minutes, and I'm gonna talk pilot talk here, you know, I
Yeah.
mean, if you're a pilot and you have the opportunity to go down a 1 mile runway or a half mile runway, a lot of times, you know, you'll take the 1 mile runway because it's a lot easier and easier to get, you know, landed and practice and not be stressed out, whereas a shorter runway, I mean, I could see teachers maybe seeing, well, this school district is 55 minutes and, you know, I mean, I don't know how big of a factor that is from a, you know, having to teach the same amount of stuff in a year, but having a shorter time span in the day being a factor and being able to hit those targets, because you're talking about less time over the year. So compared to other districts, that kind of adds up, and so I could see.
But we did compare with other districts, and most
Right.
districts
Well, that
are
was my
exact-
question. I
yeah,
mean,
they're
you know, how
exactly
big of an
where-
issue is that?
Yeah,
So.
like I know both Belleville's was a schedule that we really looked at, because it had kind of a similar to what we were looking at, and they were at 50 minutes.
Stevenson's
Most,
at 50
yeah,
minutes.
there, I mean,
Hinsdale
there were a lot that
Central's
were
at
in
50
the
minutes.
40s,
So-
high 40s, but
To do
it's,
this.
yeah.
So, and I mean, I understand going from a 6 period to a 7 period. I mean, it's, you know, it's in some ways easy math, but I mean, from some districts that, you know, you look at sort of the ones that are considered like on US News Report, you know, you look at their schedule and a lot of them are block schedules, a lot of them are A-B schedules. I mean, I'm just curious how much, you know, did y'all like try those on and think about it and
I think
just,
I
you
pushed
know.
for that more than anybody
tried
else,
that.
honestly.
Yeah, I mean,
some kind
'cause
of a modified
I
block.
would have tried one.
I mean, because
I got shut down a lot.
yeah, when I was in school, when I was in high school, it was very much the AB. It was like a rolling schedule. Every day was different. You know, one day it was an hour and a half, next day it was 45 minutes. You know, I mean, and it always kind of rotated. So there was always an opportunity to have that one class where it was like an hour and a half block to be able to like get the bulk of the stuff done for
Or
the
give a
days.
60-minute
For the
test.
days, like for instance, speaking about geometry, you know, it's a 2-day test. When they have a chapter test, it takes 2 days to get it done. That's crazy. So.
That's a love hate though, block schedule, because,
I
I
understand.
mean, you love the additional teaching time,
Mhm.
that contact time, but you hate it if you teach the class on Thursday and then you have a Monday holiday, you don't see your kiddos again until Tuesday.
Well, you know, like for instance, I saw one school where it was blocked for Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, and then the Wednesday was literally
Yeah,
every
every
class,
class.
you know,
That
so,
was
so
one of the
you,
ones I looked
yeah,
at,
so
yeah.
I thought that was just super cool, so.
We looked at a lot of those. Other questions?
When is the goal to kick off the 7-hour? Does everything happen 26,
So
26?
Terry, we click to the next slide. Thank you, Lynn. Great segue. So I really, oh, where'd it go? What'd you do?
Well,
I
I
wanna
went
go
back
back
to
to
the
the
schedule
schedule.
because.
Oh,
Jen
sorry,
brought
yeah.
scheduling.
So I really didn't want to put the slide up there, but I felt like I needed to, because we've packaged this as all 3 changes at one time. And in reality, they don't all have to happen at one time. And so I put together the things that can and should and probably need to happen together. And I can talk through each of these examples, but obviously transportation and funding of transportation is what started this conversation. So I'm going to put that at the top, that's one we can just modify it to a two-tier transportation system, and we could technically not change a whole lot else other than high school start time. So you'd have to put high school start time closer to middle school start time, and then you would leave elementary as is. So you could also modify that two-tier transportation and implement a 7-period day, and again, only really change high school time. That's also an option. You can modify transportation and change school start times, but not do a 7-period day. That is an option. It's going to, we have to shift some transportation things because the high school day would be shorter than middle school. And then obviously you can implement all three. So our plan, number one, was that this is a prequel to a potential March decision based on your feedback today, any changes that we would need to make, and that would be for all three. Now again, that's based on your feedback from today. And then we just kind of went through what the rest of the next year and a half would look like, the work that needs to happen at different checkpoints in time, so that we could offer informational sessions throughout the fall to help families understand the why behind it, how we're working to mitigate anything that's going on, sports schedules, activities, things like that, making sure that we have new routes finalized early, and that then we can communicate those early, because to Bob's point from earlier, if you're a family that's always gotten picked up at 7:15 and you're on your 5th kid coming through the high school, there's a real good chance you're not going to be picked up at 7:15 if we start at 8:45, right? So or whatever time it is. So making sure that there's early and often communication with that, and then it's not 3 days. Now, some of that's going to depend on our families registering and us getting information to be able to process through that. But it does give us a playbook to be able to then put some things in place, both in terms of thinking about course proposals, because I know we have several teachers that have some courses in their back pocket that they are waiting to pull out for a 7-period day that they want to develop, but that proposal process happens in early fall. And so giving them time to be able to then do that so that then we can consider the course proposal so it goes in course handbook. So the domino effect of a decision is much faster than what we think it is, and so we're upon that now.
Fall of 26 sounds like a long time away, but there's a lot to do between now and then.
And I would hate to lose the momentum for a lot of the foundational work that's been done in several of these areas.
How would we lose the momentum?
For instance, the implementation of the 7-period day. If the committee has done all of this work and I'm going to just speak to my own prior experience and current experience, this is wonderful. The time, the attention, the detail that's gone into this plan for a 7-period day, it is thorough. I mean, it's very thorough. But I also know that if you walk away from it for a year, some of that creativity and that energy for it can wane unless it continues to move forward with a goal of implementation. But if people are working on this and it just sits in a file for a year without any work on it, you're going to lose that momentum for the movement toward it.
I guess I'm still asking the question. I don't understand why it would sit there.
Well,
If we
I feel
put some
like
of it off.
if we choose right now not to implement a 7-period day, what's going to happen to the work that they've just done?
Yeah.
Well,
If we decide to not do the 2nd or the 4th, we just do the 1st or the 3rd on those choices.
I guess I'm just, based on the survey results, and I guess my concern is, I mean, when we talked about this in the summer at the retreat, the initial idea was to do like a phased approach to the implementation stuff, not all at once. And I was one of the ones saying, you know, I mean, it makes sense just kind of package it all up based on how it's going. But I mean, looking at the survey results though, and hearing feedback from the community, it sounds like before we actually sign on to actually voting on doing it, using those survey results, which I think is inconclusive. I feel like there's nothing that says the work can't continue, but I, as a board member, would feel more comfortable if I'm voting for one thing or another for the community to get more of a feel that we are actually listening to them more and go out, maybe what we do is we vote our commitment to establish a task force to help keep the momentum going from the discussion and bringing the community along with us, and then, keep it going. I'm not saying it has to stop if we don't vote in March. I don't understand that.
Yeah. But if you don't vote in March, then essentially what you're doing is you're pushing a decision, or you're pushing implementation to the 27-28 school year.
Right.
If you, because so much work has to be done.
Over the summer.
Well, not just over the summer, but over the next year to get ready for a 26-27 implementation.
But I don't understand why March is the actual date that it has to happen, though. I guess that's, from a process perspective, I'm not understanding. Because, regardless, any vote we take is a resolution. It's not an actual, commitment, right? We're not changing policy.
Right.
So,
Or implementing
he can
procedure.
implement it whether we vote for it or not. And if the dates change, I guess my point is that I'm not really sure what the vote is getting us, other than this is going to be a bad word. I feel like we're kind of handcuffing the community into a decision that necessarily is inconclusive from the survey results as far as what we should be doing. So I feel like we need to maybe take a little bit more time and bring the community along with us before we actually show an actual vote of commitment. I would have been more comfortable if I had felt that a lot of the survey results were more clear and conclusive. And I'm not saying it won't get that way, but I just feel like from an effort perspective, before we vote on it, I feel like if the community wants to feel that we're hearing them, I feel like they need to see us out there hearing them before we actually vote on it.
How do you propose we hear them?
Well, I think I already said, we can vote on establishing a task force, we can have a special committee.
But what would the task force, I'm just trying to understand, what would the task force do? How would they get access to more people?
This is our task force. They've been tasked.
That's what if I understand, I might support that. I just don't see how we can get, Dr. Shelton meets with community residents all the time and gives the opportunity.
Well, but let's be honest, but most of your community interaction were limited to what, 2 or 3 people at a visit?
We try to do 6 a month.
But how many show up?
We've had plenty of months without 6.
So
I'm not so sure,
I guess my point is I think the word is out. And now that the word's out, I think if we have more concerted effort to, instead of having, like when we were talking about the middle school curriculum, it was after the vote. And so when the people that showed up felt like, they had no say. They were just there listening. So I feel like if we, maybe had another auditorium meeting where we invite parents in to talk and listen, let's, give them
like
an opportunity.
focus groups or something like, I just want to see
Yeah, I just
what that looks
think
like
a more concerted effort is warranted.
Are you talking about just for the 7th period day, or are you talking about the
whole thing.
transportation?
This is a lot.
Well,
this is a lot.
I don't
all
think
at
we have an
once.
option for the transportation, because we can't continue to go negative.
Well,
So I don't know.
I'm
So I
not
think we
convinced
need to
because
make
I
that
haven't seen
decision.
numbers that actually show me that it's a savings. So I understand the concept, but until I actually start seeing what those routes look like and seeing what it means from a mileage perspective, it's hard for me to make a decision and commit us to going to a 2-tier without me actually seeing it.
But okay, let's start with the transportation. In a 3-tier, if you go down to 2, you're cutting your bus routes down by 1/3.
Yeah.
That's going to be
Right.
1/3
There's
less
gonna be
But
miles.
does the community understand what that means from a service level agreement?
Meaning,
So.
Well, kids could
okay, let me
potentially be on the
ask
bus
this.
longer than they are now.
and yeah, it was
Most-
said,
Yeah,
and the others might be on the bus shorter.
Right,
potentially, yeah.
right.
Because
We've
because one of the
periodically
things,
gone through transportation changes. I remember when Tara was at Woodland, what year was that? I think Mia was like in 3rd or 4th grade. We had a huge transportation change. Then we've revisited another couple years ago. And so, I think it's to some degree, you learn to adjust to transportation changes. And even though it's kind of a shock to your system, and I wasn't thrilled that the bus schedule changed, I had no control over it either, and we just adjusted.
So if I look at 2025, we're going to be in the hole almost $900,000.
We're running, we've got about
900,000. If we could cut that by a third, say $300,000 financially, I get not everybody is going to be happy with that. Not everybody's happy with the amount of money that's being spent. People aren't happy with the amount of time that their child's on the bus. People might not be happy with how students are mixed on a bus. There's a lot of things that are going to carry into people's discontent about whatever decision is made. But that's what I know we need to listen to what the community is saying, but at some point we need to as a board make a decision. And if you're talking about looking at data, yes, this 50-50 split on the data is hard to stomach because we'd like for it to be more definitive. But there is one data point here that was pretty definitive to me, and that is that people want a decision that's best for their students and learning.
Right.
And so my question for you is, who's best suited to make that decision?
The 5 parents you talk to, or the 5 she talks to, or the 5 I talk to? How do you decide that?
We ask the experts, right? The experts in the room. They've kind of weighed in on it already. And it's up to us to question and make sure that we understand it thoroughly.
So here's my concern.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll be very clear about this concern.
Mm-hmm.
I am all in on what the ultimate goal is. My concern is I would like for the community to feel like they're brought along with us instead of having it rammed down their throat. And so my concern is when we start talking about the transportation plan, I'm not saying that going to a 2-tier system is bad. I'm not saying it's good. I'm saying I would like to see some numbers instead of assumptions. That's all I'm saying.
So you need.
I just think that there is not enough data. I think it's inconclusive, and I think we're making some assumptions that I would be hard pressed to say it would be. I don't want to get a year from now when all of a sudden we're doing it and there's no savings.
So I think that's a worthy question, is what kind of savings can we expect from running a 2-tier system versus a 3-tier system? But I think it's all conjecture, and it's very difficult to say how that's all going to play out. But we do know that we, have a $890,000 deficit. We do have a balance in the transportation fund. But whenever we're running the transportation fund and we're running that kind of year deficit, we don't want to take money from the other funds in order to satisfy the transportation fund. And that's one of the arguments that I've heard. Oh, we'll just move some money around in funds. No, we probably need to make sure our operations are running, that we're at least creating a budget balance within the transportation fund itself. And so far, that's the idea that's been presented, I think, that makes sense.
In January of Board Retreat, we gave an example that if you eliminate 5 routes in 30 minutes from half of the routes, there's a savings of about $390,000.
Okay, thank you.
Now, what we don't know is exactly how many routes are eliminated, but we do know that there will be time eliminated from routes. So we do know that.
It is basic math when you provide service to 100% of the kids and 22% of high school kids ride the bus. How can we not save a lot of money there? Or 50% of grade school kids and 53 middle school,
For that
That's
matter, we
almost
can probably
more than
take
half
care
our
of
district.
a lot of that deficit just by going to a 7-period day, because we won't need early bird and all the buses that deal with that.
But we don't
And we
fix
don't
the
have to
issue.
even
Don't
go
have that
to a
many early
2-tier
bird buses,
system.
though, do we?
Yeah, we
So,
don't. But we also don't fix the seniors or kids in high school don't need to go to school this early.
I'm
And
not arguing that.
helps.
You're completely missing the point. I'm just saying that the way the survey was conducted, I think a lot of people felt like they were being driven to a particular answer, and they felt like that the survey was kind of guiding them in a certain direction. I think that we need to make a more concerted effort to reach out to the community and to be there and listen and explain what's going on in a way that they'll understand, so that then, 6 months from now, not putting anything on the shelf, still working in a direction. I mean, because he doesn't need us to vote on it to keep it moving in a direction, let's be honest. And then the community can feel like that we took the time to bring them along with us.
How many surveys do we need to do? I'm
I'm not even saying it's
I don't think
that we
it's-
necessarily
I
need
don't
to.
even think I don't think it's even about a survey anymore, because we've done a lot of surveys, and this one's wrong, this one's wrong. But we had an agenda for what, was this go on 7 days before here? And it says transportation, school start time, 7-period day, update and presentation. You guys did a phenomenal job. I mean, the questions I have were based on the information that you gave me. And if it is, we are making a concerted effort to bring the community along. The community just has to come. They have to hear this, and they have to hear what we're hearing. And we can't do that if we do when we're doing a survey now. We are going to lead them in the information that we have. But it seems to me that a survey is something that we do. It's not good enough. We do it again, and it's just.
We do have members of the press here, and we are being streamed on YouTube, so I think there are plenty of opportunity for people to access this information.
And this isn't the first time we've discussed it.
I guess, and then,
Detail.
my thought on the school start times is that I thought you were on board with 100% with later school start times.
Okay, so do not twist my concern about bringing the community along that I am not in favor of the school start time.
Oh, I'm not.
I think
I'm
I've
not-
been
I'm trying-
very clear about my stance on school start
You
time.
have, you have,
Okay.
and you have,
Okay.
and you have. You've been clear on the savings that we can make with the bus. I mean, everything that you've shared with us aligns with what we have talked about today. We just have to figure out the community piece to.
The messaging and the communication.
So, but this, to me, starts with the messaging, and it starts the messaging early, which is something that we needed to start doing.
And you know what? This can still go. I'm just going to go back to original what I said. I feel like voting on it in 2 weeks makes the community feel like that it's locked in, and any concern they have, they're going to be told, well, but the board's already voted on it. This is what we're doing. And I feel like that sends the wrong message.
The flip side to that is that we have teams that are ready to dive into the work, and without board support, they're not going to dive in as deeply.
There's a lot of work to be done here.
There's a lot of work that's been done too.
Yes, absolutely.
And I'm not saying that work can't continue. I'm just saying that the messaging that a vote sends matters. Okay, I'm done.
Any other questions or thoughts?
Do our students have any other questions or thoughts?
That was a very good presentation.
You're just saying that because those are your teachers, right? Or you know the teachers.
Wait,
The teachers have put
next year, Josie?
Somebody took a test, next year. Somebody took a test for me today.
I was
She's thinking ahead.
Keep me in
So,
your
we
good
have that.
graces when you grade my test late.
You know it's not happening tonight, right?
No, we need to grade no.
Second semester calculus is so difficult too, isn't it?
Well, Miss Rice is a good teacher, so.
You're doing really good. Well done. Okay, we will move on to our action consideration for this evening. And it is approval of action item 5.1. Dr. Shelton.
My board docs got closed, so do you have it? It's recommended the Board of Education approve personnel matters related to the resignations and retirements of employees.
Move to approve.
Second.
And questions? Please call the roll.
Fund,
Yes.
Sanderson,
Yes.
Delariva,
Yes.
Brumback,
Yes.
Patey,
Yes.
Birtles.
Yes. Approval of action item 5.2, Dr. Schulman.
Thank you. It's recommended that the Board of Education approve personnel matters related to the appointment, employment, compensation, or transfer of employees, pending required certifications and professional educator license, completion of paperwork, and all background fingerprint checks completed and cleared.
Move for approval.
Second.
And questions? Please call the roll.
Brumback,
Yes.
Delariva,
Yes.
Fund,
Yes.
Sanderson,
Yes.
Patey,
Yes.
Birtles.
Yes. With no further business, may I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second?
All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Thank you for spending part of your evening with us. Meeting adjourned.